Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now, 865-243-TALK. That's 243-8255. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome to the Patrick Riggins Show. The show standing out among the thousands of others because we use logic and reasoning with an emphasis on liberty and freedom for everyone. And the station providing the equipment, which takes my voice and frequency modulates the carrier wave of 100.3 megahertz, or megacycles if you're an old timer, is the powerhouse radio station WNOX. Our signal is currently being heard in parts of 5 of these great southeastern United States and both the eastern and central time zones. And given the vagaries of propagational effects, you might also be receiving this signal from outside our normal broadcast footprint. That means you might be experiencing this show for the very first time, and you will quickly find yourself addicted to the liberty and freedom which is featured here each week. If you would like to continue to listen but don't want to rely on the ionosphere to bring you your weekly fix of me, Patrick Riggins, feel free to tune us in over the internet. Just point your favorite web browser to the address www.wnoxfm.com, and there you will receive an added bonus at no extra charge. You get to actually watch me in the studio. Yes, handsome and hunky me. Every independent-minded woman's dream. And yes, even the liberal women love me too, because they know that here we stand and fight for our principles and don't walk around slump-shouldered and weak-minded. Again, that address is wnoxfm.com. And speaking of handsome and hunky, our show producer Tori is with us again this week. But unfortunately for everyone tuning in on the internet and wondering if he is available, sadly, girls, he is taken.
Yes.
He's happily married, which, not sure how those two words go together. I guess the closest association for me would be blissfully deceased.
Adequately married.
Yeah. Well, I see. If you're blissfully deceased, you'd be happy, but your life is over. Is that how it works?
No. I'm tickled to death. And she's listening, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. She's taking notes. She's going, keep Tori away from Patrick.
I do want to say, if anybody is watching us online or listening to us online, we have been having problems with our internet all day, popping in and out. So if you look up on your screen and you don't see our beautiful faces and you just see a black image, we're trying to get it taken care of. So, just be patient with us.
It's not because the station is embarrassed of us.
Yes. Like I said, I don't know if they can hear us on the audio feed online or not. Oh. So if you can't hear us, then I guess
then it really doesn't matter. All right.
If you can't hear us, okay.
Tough. This week we have had a lot going on, and I will tell you right now, I won't be able to get to everything I want to talk about. So, first of all, I will make the most important announcement, and then we'll get to all this other stuff. I would like to express my sincere thanks to everyone who is tuning in this week, maybe for the first time. And to all our loyal and regular audience, you are what makes a radio show successful, and I thank you very much for listening. Although that is only half of it. By listening to the commercials, the companies who help bring you this show each week, and calling them when you need what they are advertising, you are directly participating in the success of this show and for what it stands. And what does this show stand for? Well, it is announced the first of the show in every segment. We stand for liberty, freedom, and the restoration of the Constitution. You see, I don't care what color your skin might be. I don't care where you were born. I don't care who your grandparents were, or great-grandparents, or even your parents for that matter. I don't care what job you work. I don't care what car you drive, what grade your kids make in school. None of that matters to me. All that matters is that you respect my rights and freedoms because I respect yours. And anyone in government that tells you they're working for you and care about you and only want the best for you, well, they're more than likely lying. We don't like to think about it, but it is true. But there's nothing bad about that. It is just a fact of life. Think about it. Do you really care what I did yesterday? Do you care where I went shopping or what I did with my free time? No, of course not. What you care about is what is happening in your life right now. What is going on at work? How your friends are doing. And that's good. It is good because you care about the things closest to you, because that is where your freedom and liberty is located. It is yours. You are born with these natural rights. The government does not give them to you. And as the song by 70s group America says, and we've got a little cut of it right here. Tori's frantically grabbing the mixer.
But Oz never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have.
See, not even Oz never gave nothing to the Tin Man he didn't already have. That clip was for Tori. I know he likes that group. So
I like America.
Yeah, it is a good song, and the message is relevant in that these rights, these freedoms, these liberties are innate. We have them first, and only when we create government did we cede some of them to do what we allow it to do. The power we have over government is our vote. No matter how many people tell you that your vote doesn't count, that with so many people voting, that your individual vote does not matter. It does, in a way. To be totally honest, in the aggregate, your vote may not mean a whole lot because of the margin of victory, but it is what that vote represents. It means you are actively, or you should be actively, watching what our elected representatives are doing. And by voting, by researching the issues and determining where you stand on them, and where the people running for office stand, you become a more informed citizen who is more than likely going to influence the people around you with your educated opinion, and not just regurgitating what you saw on the news, along with the opinion of whoever was featured that night. This is why I don't have a whole lot of guests on this show, particularly politicians, because I just don't have patience with someone who tells me it's okay to sell out, to accept something that goes against my principles. Just this one time. Well, you know, when I hear a politician saying it's okay to vote on something which they don't agree to, quote, get something passed, I want to ask them, where else is it okay not to live up to your principles? And if you cannot be trusted to stick to them, how in the world am I supposed to vote for you? I can't even trust you. All right, enough of the ranting. It's time for a break here. This week we have a bunch of stuff to get to, and we'll get started after this first break of the seemingly short hour of the Patrick Riggins Show. This is me, Patrick Riggins, and we'll be right back.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Riggins with the Patrick Riggins Show, leading the charge down this path to libertarianism. Whoa, man. Yeah, there's got to be something in my water. I'm fighting a little bit of a head cold. I don't know if you can hear that through the radio, and I took some decongestant, so that's what's doing that. That's tripping me up a little.
Holy cow!
Yeah. And what somebody will do is they'll take that clip that says Patrick's leading down the trail of liberalism and just play that somewhere. All right. Anyway, this week I was tooling around the internet and saw Fox News did a story about homeschooling, and they were focusing on the African American community, and as any listener to this show knows, we're pretty much behind that, and behind turning all this government-run schooling over to private education. And I think this story was interesting, how it refutes some of the arguments against going to a private educational system in America. And first off, they had now this is from Fox News. They had a quote from George Noblett, and he's a professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And here's what he had to say about the present education system.
The current state of education is actually not one that's conducive to kids learning. More and more kids end up not being served well. So I think African Americans are positively saying, it's time to find a better educational situation.
So here is a professor admitting that the educational system in America is in bad need of repair. If you're looking to government to fix it, well, frankly, you're out of luck. They have no motivation to look inside their own institution and correct the problems that are there. Just look at this last fight here locally in Knox County where the school system, well, they're acting just like some sort of beggar. No matter what you give them, they still want more. And one of the arguments against homeschooling is that students will somehow miss out on being in a formal school situation and around other people who are seemingly bent on ruining any chance at them getting a decent education. But here's what one of the students had to say about that.
Homeschool, nothing against public school, but I say, you're not really missing out on anything.
So here's a 16-year-old who has been homeschooled and for the past 5 years. His name's Kamal Hayes. And he doesn't miss being in a formal classroom one bit. So that social argument just does not hold water at all. Many great people have been educated at home, and some even educated themselves without their parents' help. Not because their parents didn't care, it's because they were busy trying to make a living in hard times. But they still insisted that their children educate themselves so they would have it easier than their parents did. Along with homeschooling come many additional benefits, and this is described by Kamal's mother, Kisha Hayes, in this clip right here.
We're able to focus on Black history a little bit more than I think public school may give it. We're able to actually learn the things that we want to learn, whatever that might be, and I think that would go with any nationality.
And this is where homeschooling excels. It provides an individualized education for a child that the public schools just don't have the time nor the resources to give. And for those who would say that parents cannot be trusted to teach their own children, which is a lot of times the argument against this, here is another clip from the story.
We had to make sure that we put the right things on the inside of him, so at the end of the day, when it's time for him to go out and stand and be a man, he'll be able to affect and change society for good, and not for bad.
See, so the parents have a much more vested interest in making sure their children are educated well and ready to tackle what life has out there for them. By also taking this out of the government's purview, this would also stop all the yelling and screaming about things happening at school that one side of the political spectrum or another disagree with. Because this is a government-run system, it is subject to the political maneuverings of whatever is happening at the moment. A private school would not be blowing in the winds like this. It would have a defined set of principles that it would go by, and people sending their children would know them in advance. So if they did not agree with them, then they would not send their children to school there. So you may have a school that would teach creationism. You may have a school that teaches evolution. You may have a school that believes in and promotes, or not promote, but I guess, I don't know if tolerate would be the right word, but they would be inclusive of homosexuality. And of course, some people that sending their kids to a Christian school, that would not be the same goals of that school. You literally could also have a school that takes a strict interpretation of the Quran, and on and on. If we would just get government out of the education business, we would have much better results grade-wise and much better efficiency money-wise. But unfortunately, like many things the government is into, removing it is very, very hard. One reason is because a lot of people make a lot of money and derive a lot of benefits from working in a government-run institution. Another argument is that some parents won't make their children go to school, and they won't teach them at home. So we as a society are going to suffer. My response to that would be, well, right now, we are already making kids go to school, and way too many of them are not learning anything. If children don't want to learn, then they aren't going to put forth the effort to do it. You just cannot open up their heads and pour in the education. They have to want to learn. The big question is, how can you encourage them to desire an education enough to work to get one. Well, the fact is, kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. So the answer is to cut off this government-sponsored aid completely. When they look around, they realize if you don't have a job, then you're not going to have any money coming in. Then they realize that the only choice is to get an education, either through books and traditional or learning a trade. Either way, something of value for which they can earn money. It is when you make it easy to be poor that people will stay poor. And don't tell me they cannot help themselves. I think the last number I saw was that half the people in this country are receiving some type of government aid. I just refuse to believe that half the people in this country are so downtrodden they cannot make it with some type of government aid. Which, it brings me to a real quick story from yesterday. I was in a store, and this is one of those stores that, well, it could easily cover probably a football field. And I was walking around in there and kept passing this elderly couple that were pushing a little shopping cart around. And every time I passed them, they were complaining about something. Either the store never had some item in stock, or they didn't carry this particular brand or color, and I passed them literally probably 5 to 8 times while I was in there shopping. Now keep in mind, again, this is no small store, so they had to be doing some serious walking around in there. And of course, as fate would have it, they ended up right in front of me in the checkout line. Of course, they were still complaining about how every time they came in this store, something was not right. And I was just standing there and I thought, why in the world would you come back in here if it is so bad? I mean, are you crazy? Or are you a couple of masochists? What? It was like they weren't happy unless they were complaining. So I'm walking out the door and I'm a little bit behind them, and they get into a truck with a disability license plate parked in the handicap space right in the very front of the store. Now, this is the same couple that had just walked around for at least 30 minutes in this store. They were walking, and it did not seem to be bothering either one of them. They get into a truck with a disability plate. I know you have seen this just as much as I have. There is nothing wrong with these people other than they want something for nothing. I'm sure if they are so-called disabled, they are probably also getting a check from the government containing my tax money. This is why we're in trouble with this country. There's too many people that don't care to take money from other hardworking people. And it just really makes me mad and drives me absolutely crazy when I see that sort of thing. I think it's just ripe with abuse right now, just more so than in the past. Maybe it's partly because of the economy. Maybe it's because, they're just looking for an easy time nowadays. That's a little bit more out there than it used to be. But whatever it is, it can't be because their parents taught them this, because this was an elderly couple, so their parents had to have grown up when teaching working for yourself and making your own way is what you taught your kids. And I would think at the age this couple was, they would have also been teaching their kids this as well. Now, kind of nowadays, that isn't taught so much, but I would think they would be from the generation when that would have been taught. Unfortunately, I think what happens is we have this really creeping type of socialism that's not starting to infect, but it's already infecting a large part of our population that years and years ago they wouldn't have even considered taking money without from their neighbors, which is what you're doing. If you're on government aid, that's where the money's coming from. It's not coming from the government, because the government can't, they don't sell anything. They have no way to make money. What they do is they take money from someone else and give it to you. If I did that, it would be called stealing or theft. If I take money from you at a point of a gun, it doesn't really matter what I'm going to do with it. The fact that I did it is the part that's against the law. So anyway, we're coming up on the bottom of the hour here. boy, this hour goes by quick. So we will be back after the bottom of the hour break. We'll have, we got a couple of things to get to. We might get to Scott Walker a little bit and some more information about the government ruining your life in society. So we'll see after the break. This is Patrick Riggins with the Patrick Riggins Show. What I'd like to do right now is take you on a little journey to a place I'll call Libertarian-Land. In this land, and well, to keep it simple, we'll say we have people who grow their own food and everyone has plenty to eat. But unfortunately, no one can make horseshoes. Remember, we are keeping this simple, so we'll use horses as a means of transportation. So one of the people growing food, we'll call them gardeners, he decides to teach himself how to make horseshoes and put them on horses in his spare time. But since he is now a blacksmith, he doesn't have time for a garden. So the gardeners tell him they will trade things from their gardens in return for the blacksmith to make shoes for their horses. So now everyone will have something to eat and shoes for their horses. Everything's honky-dory, but along comes government. And they tell the gardeners, well, they have to inspect the blacksmith's horseshoes to make sure they are the correct weight and made of the right grade of metal. Because if one breaks, well, then the rider of that horse, which could be them or a loved one, could be thrown from the horse and even possibly killed. So all government is trying to do is to protect the gardeners from that unscrupulous blacksmith. And in the same way, to play one off the other, the government tells the blacksmith that he needs to inspect the gardener's vegetables to make sure the gardener isn't giving the blacksmith carrots and lettuce that does not meet the quality standards. So both sides tell the government this is ridiculous because everyone knows each other and they wouldn't shortchange the other one. So the government's response to this is, well, what about people you don't know? People who you may trade with from another community. They don't know you, and you don't know them. Therefore, the people from the other community are going to try and rip you off without the government watching them. So the people reply, we won't shortchange each other because we both have an interest in making sure everything is above board. We want to continue to trade with each other, and only through honesty can that happen. Now, the government, being made up of people who neither garden nor blacksmith, well, they have to find a way to earn a living. So they decide to pass a law requiring the inspection of food from the gardener and the inspection of the items the blacksmith produces. And since it has to pay people to do this, it decides to tax everything sold and keep the money to pay for the inspections. Inspections that no one wanted or really needed. And when the people revolt under this system, the government uses the argument that is merely protecting both sides, because if bad food was traded to the blacksmith, he might get sick. And if a bad horseshoe was traded to a gardener, well, then he might get thrown from a horse and killed. But by having the government in the mix, it can protect both. Unfortunately, if the majority of the people in the community are not liberty-minded and are deceived by the government's promise of safety and protection, then the community starts to suffer from this infection called governmental interference. The sad fact of the matter is, too many people buy into this, that the government is there to protect them from others when it isn't, and furthermore, it really cannot. If it could, we would never have outbreaks of disease resulting from bad food, or cars that have to be recalled, or toys found to be too dangerous. So, if the government cannot protect us, then what is the answer? Well, protect yourself. Seek out independent testing of items you buy. With the advent of the internet, just about anything you buy, someone else has already had it and written a review. You can trust 50 people telling you something about an item, much more so than one faceless and largely unaccountable government agency. Too many people of us have have become conditioned to letting the government run everything, and we just sit back and allow it to happen, while our liberties and freedoms are slowly taken from us in the name of safety and security. And if you want to allow it to happen during peacetime, then the government will just start a never-ending war against an adversary who is amorphous and vaguely defined. Let's call it a nice-sounding name like, I'll just pull this one out of a hat. How about a war on terror? And unlike a war on Japan or a war on Germany, this war is not defined, and we can call whoever we want an enemy and thus perpetuate it for all time. In that way, the government makes up the rules as it goes along. So if you start asking questions about why you are having your rights violated, you will be told that we are fighting a war. And during war, it is necessary to do things we would not normally do. But hey, rest assured, the government will tell you, as soon as this, what we're calling a war on terror is over, we can all sit back and we'll enjoy our freedom and our liberties again. Unfortunately, this, quote, war will never be over. I mean, how can it be? We have a continually changing definition of what it constitutes and who we are fighting against. So I guess if we allow it to, the government will just assume the new normal is a state of war against people who don't like us, of which, we will never run out, since we aren't going to run out of people not liking us. That's just how it is in the world. So since we're not going to run out of people not liking us, we won't run out of war. Since we're not running out of war, we're not going to run out of restrictions on our liberties and freedoms in the name of that war. This is a big reason why this war on terror is just handmade for the government, because they can sit out there and define whoever they want as an enemy. And if you read through a lot of the legislation that gets passed, that's largely up to whoever the president says is an enemy. If he decides you're an enemy and you're what we call a domestic terrorist, then guess what? You'll assume, you won't even know. The FBI can write a search warrant, not get a judge's approval, come in, search your house, and not tell you a word about it. In this way, the government just continually saps away your freedoms and liberties without ever having a time on the horizon when you're going to get them back, because we'll never be done with this war on terror. Anyway, we're coming up on the last segment of the show. Boy, this show just flies by. So, anyway, this is Patrick Riggins with the Patrick Riggins Show. We'll be back with the last segment, and we'll try to cram as much as we can in before the end of the show. Join us here in a couple of minutes. This week, I was doing some show prep and ran across a story. Those of you who keep up with libertarian-type stuff know who John Stossel is, and he had a good piece on Reason.com about the question, and this is more still along the lines of government, but deviating a little bit into the healthcare industry, and his column was, should they be involved in Medicare or medicine at all? He made a real good point when he stated in the article, because Obamacare requires insurance companies to cover every child regardless of pre-existing conditions, WellPoint, Humana, and Cigna got out of the child-only business. Principal Financial stopped offering health insurance altogether. So now 1 million customers no longer have the choice to keep their insurance. This is to be expected when governments control health care. Since state funding makes medical services seem free, demand increases. Governments deal with that by rationing. Advocates of government health care hate the word rationing because it forces them to face an ugly truth. Once you accept the idea that taxpayers pay, individual choice dies. Someone else decides what treatment you get and when. And addressing the point that many people approve of government health care in Canada and Britain, he stated also down in the column that true surveys show that most Brits and Canadians like their free health care. But Dr. David Gratzer notes that most people surveyed aren't sick. Now, Gratzer is a Canadian who also liked Canada's government health care. That is, until he started treating patients. More than 1 million Canadians say they can't find a family doctor. Some towns even hold lotteries to determine who gets to see one. In Norwood, Ontario, the town clerk pulled 4 names out of a big box and then telephoned the lucky winners. Congratulations, you get to see the doctor this month. But repealing Obamacare is not enough. We need to get the government out of healthcare market altogether. And he states a little bit more down in the column, contrary to what some Republicans say, we didn't have a free medical market before Obama came to power. We had a system that limited competition through occupational licensing, FDA rules, and other government intrusions, while stimulating demand through tax-favored employee-based insurance, in quotes, Medicare and Medicaid. And he wrapped up the column with, if we want affordable and cutting-edge health care, there's only one approach that will work. That's open competition. That means eliminating both bureaucratic obstacles and corporate privileges. Only free markets can give us the innovation at the lowest possible cost. Of course, that also means consumers should spend their own money on health care, limiting insurance to catastrophic expenses. Unfortunately, Americans don't want to hear that because that's the truth. Again, that was a column by John Stossel at Reason.com. You can find it there if you go over to their website. Interestingly enough, at Reason.com. Again, it was by John Stossel, came out June 14th, entitled, Why Should Government Be Involved in Medicine at All? This is Patrick Riggins with The Patrick Riggins Show. Have a great week.
Join us again next week for a solid dose of truth on The Patrick Riggins Show, every Sunday from 4 to 5 p.m. Be there.